From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell and I'm in the BBC's commentary box at Trent Bridge in Nottingham this week. It's the first men's test match of the summer and Zimbabwe are playing here for the first time in a test since 2003. Lots of intrigue and a great deal of optimism as well at the start of the international summer.
Hi there, Jim Maxwell for the ABC from Sydney. A very damp Sydney, but the day has been lit up here by Mr. Postecoglou, the coach of Tottenham Hotspur, the first Aussie to ever grab a big trophy, and Spurs first for 17 years. So we're delighted to hear about that overnight. And, well, the cricket's coming up, but just for the moment, football is big news in Australia.
Well, it was pretty wet and damp in Bangalore as well, but I've flown the coop. I'm now in Dubai once again, where it's quite the opposite of where you are, Jim. Very dry, hot as well, just outside the room. I'm glad to be here to do a little bit of IPL work for some wonderful, happy channels that spread cricket around in the UAE. I'm Charu Sharma for Akashvani. Delighted to be back on Stumped, back in Dubai.
Now, 2025 is expected to be a defining year for the Brendan McCullum-Ben Stokes partnership, beginning with this one-off test match against Zimbabwe at Trent Bridge. And after that, well, it's a marquee home series, 5 test matches against India before ending the year with the Ashes in Australia. Now, McCullum dramatically revived England's test fortunes when he took over in 2022. But last winter, well, a little bit different and more mixed results. So we had England winning a test series in New Zealand 2-1, but then losing by the same scoreline in Pakistan. And they also enjoyed a pretty wretched time in white ball cricket, losing all 3 games in the Champions Trophy. That led to the resignation of Jos Buttler as captain. And the white ball team is now going through a reset as well under new captain Harry Brook. 3 months on, though, McCullum says his side has, as he says, they've got to shoot for the stars. So, Jim, how much will this year define what has become known as the Bazball era?
Well, the Bazball has done its bit, but we should move on. I mean, we're into Ben Ball, let's face it. Without Ben Stokes, England aren't a hot side. With him, they're inspired and they can play some really good cricket. They could blitz through India, who have lost Kohli, and, lose their way a bit in England. And they could also overwhelm Australia. There's every chance of that. But they need Stokes on the park, fully fit, because he's not going to go on the park unless he bowls, and he wants to bowl even with an injury, it seems, these days. But if he's got over his hamstring injury and he's in good nick, and England have got some very exciting players in that side, that's what I reckon we're looking forward to. Ben Ball.
If you can see some movement behind me as well, just to say, we are in setting up mode for this test match. There's a little bit going on in the commentary box, a hive of activity. Charu, do you think that we're going to see a bit of an updated version of Bazball, or at least a slightly different approach against India in a few weeks' time? Because listening to Brendan McCullum this week, he seems to suggest there's a bit of regret there, an acknowledgement that at times England have let opportunities slip in test matches.
Well, he has copped quite a bit of criticism, hasn't he, from several pundits about just going hard. Well, not him, but the team under him, of just going hard all the time. And there's no sort of there's no other gear. There's only the 5th gear. A lot of other teams, by the way, as a tribute to what McCullum has done for England, are playing very similar cricket. You'll find a lot of teams going really hard almost all the way, which is very good for test match cricket, just not so good for English cricket, because they've lost more than they've won because of that attitude. And it's left a lot of pundits wondering, why can't they gear down and just sort of, buckle down and kind of play good old-fashioned test match cricket when required? Is there a Bazball 2.0? Is he, because, the Bazball essentially means going hard all the time. But if the English get a little confused about, well, should we go hard now and maybe not now, I don't think that'll work very well for the team. They've done fairly well. And of course, they know their own conditions as well as any team could, which is going to be very rough for visitors. So I suppose they have the upper hand anyway. And if they have a different strategy now of maybe just seeing the ball a little more, or because India does have reasonable fast bowling, at least fast bowling, if not spin quality, as they go into England, then I look forward to seeing what new Bazball 2.0 could be.
Well, I was listening to Ben Stokes in the lead up to this match, and he's now using this word domination. And he wants the team to dominate, but it's also about recognising when you are under the pump that you need to dial it back a little bit. Jim, you were talking about the importance of Ben Stokes to this team on an inspirational level, and he's had so much time out, hasn't he, last 10 to 12 months, and coming back from his hamstring injury. England have really got to manage his fitness, haven't they?
Yes, well, they and him in turn have got to manage it. I mean, he's 33 now, entering that period of twilight time for the big victories. I mean, with Brendan McCullum in charge, they haven't beaten India or Australia. So they've got a bit to do in the next 12 months, 9 months. And as I mentioned before, so much depends not only about Stokes and his leadership and his inspiration, but what he can physically do. Because as we've noticed, he's a match winner with the bat, and he can be influencing the game with his bowling. So they need all of that if they're to put on a performance in Australia. Because, well, let's face it, over the years, England have been at best spasmodic in Australia. Australia always compete in England. They still haven't won an Ashes series there for some time, but they're always thereabouts. So I don't know how England are going to work that out, but it'll help if Stokes can keep his body in good nick for the next couple of months at least. And it's a very exciting 12 months or so of cricket, with a little thing at Lord's coming up in a couple of weeks' time that might tantalise us as well. For only, the second time in history we're going to see South Africa play Australia in England. And it's worth reflecting on what happened in 1912 if you really want to think,
we'll probably do
to
that
think about all of this.
when we get to the final. We'll go back to 1912 because we will be at Lord's for that, Stumped, and you're coming over for that as well, which is fabulous.
I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it should be a great occasion.
Definitely. It does feel as if this England team now have gone to a bit of a shift where rather than talking about entertaining in the moment, they want to be number one in the world. And Stokes is saying that they want to be the best, and they recognise that they need to win series in order to do that, and they want to win every game that they play. So that is going to mean that you can't just go hard all the time. Now, Charu, England's bowling department, we all know bowling is key to taking 20 wickets to win a test match, but it's got quite a different look about it now, hasn't it, after retirement of, first it was Stuart Broad and then James Anderson last English summer. So there's not a lot of experience there. Should fans be excited or a little bit concerned?
Excited for sure. If you remember many weeks or was it months now, almost a year ago, when Anderson Jimmy was retiring, there was this who next? And look how Gus Atkinson stepped up. I mean, he was magnificent. Didn't make anyone realize that, there's a huge shift. He started out really well. He got 50-odd wickets in just about 11 tests. So he's doing really well. Already the spearhead of the attack. Now, we know that Tong may not have the same amount of experience, and certainly not Cook, who's likely to make his debut. So that's three bowlers with very little experience, but they are bowling in their own conditions. So that's a big help. They know which length to hit. And Cook, of course, is that sort of 130 bowler who does worry the batsman because he moves the ball around a bit. And quite a few of the batsmen are, if not scared, they're certainly wary. I don't think there's a really big problem in the fast bowling department for England. They're playing in their own conditions, likely to be fairly greenish wickets. It's still sort of early summer. But it's the spin department that I'm really worried about, because you've got Shoaib Bashir, who is an offie, and the only support he will get is from another offie, and that's Joe Root. So if the fast bowlers are not working, I think there's a very poor backup plan there for England. And of course, we don't quite know how much Ben Stokes is going to bowl as the fourth seamer. So I think the backup is a bit of a problem. I don't think the lead trio are going to have a bad series against India in their own conditions.
I have to say the conditions are not quite as green and seeming as they often are in May, because it's been so dry here. I'm looking out the outfield at Trent Bridge. There's huge dry patches, sort of bare, well, not quite bare, but it's very patchy in the deep outfield for sure.
We take dry.
Yeah.
We take dry any time in England.
Well, exactly. Jim, what about the white ball game for England? Because Harry Brook is the new England men's captain, and Since the Test team last played 5 months ago, Brendan McCullum has now taken on the role of white ball head coach as well. The T20 World Cup is in early 2026, but this year does feel like it is all about the India series and the Ashes in Test cricket. Is there any chance of McCullum sort of spreading himself, a bit too thin when there needs to be such a focus on Test cricket this year?
Well, I suppose it depends a bit on how important they think any 50 over white ball in particular is at this point. It probably doesn't come up strongly again until the next World Cup. But yeah, it is hard to get your head switched on to white ball cricket other than perhaps IPL at the moment, when all this quality, potentially quality red ball cricket is ahead of us.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? A lot of teams split the red and white ball because of the amount of travel involved, not least, and life balance and workload balance. At Charu in India, Gautam Gambhir is doing both at the moment. How does he manage things? How has he managed things thus far?
Well, controversially, if I can use that term, because it didn't start out very well for him. In India, losing to New Zealand and India losing a series at home was always a very tough thing for Indian fans to stomach. And of course, didn't go too well in Australia either. But that was likely to be very tough opposition almost always. So it hasn't started well for him. I think there is a lot of talk before the England series because of the retirement of the top two, as in Sharma and Kohli. So he goes in with a younger lot, less experience, but it gives him the opportunity of being more in control. I think with the senior players, he was actually their colleague for quite a few years. He might have not been able to, if I may say, well, I think could have helped him in terms of a think tank. But they might have told him, well, listen, you mind your own business. We'll do our business because we know what's going on. But with the younger lot, I think he'll have a lot more influence, a lot more work to do. But I suspect if it doesn't go well from in England, there might be a lot of thought about, oh, well, 3 big series lost away and one of them at home. And maybe he's not the right guy for India. And there will be a lot of pressure on him.
And one thing McCullum might look at, if he does need to step away and miss the odd series here or there, of course, Marcus Trescothick stepped in and was interim coach before McCullum's appointment. And Andrew Flintoff is in charge now and coaching the England Lions, whether at some stage, he could step up. It's not impossible that we might see him step in to coach in England, a full senior white ball team. Probably sooner rather than later.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on ABC and Akashvani.
I'm here at Trent Bridge for England's one-off test match against Zimbabwe, and it's the African nation's first test in England in 22 years. And just as remarkably, this test is one of 11 that Zimbabwe will play this year. That is more than England and India, and it's the same number that Australia will play in the year 2025. Now, given Zimbabwe have averaged just under 3 tests a year since their return to Test cricket in 2011, it is a sudden and quite massive leap in competitive action for them. I've been speaking to Zimbabwe Cricket's managing director, Givemore Makoni, and asked him why they're playing so many tests this year and, crucially, how they're managing it financially.
We have a rich history of Test cricket, which we've played. We're one of the few members who've played more than 100 tests. So it's something that we have been doing in the past, and Test cricket is what brings out the cricketers. I think when the new board took over, they make a conscious decision to say, let's go back and play Test. This is the only way our team's going to improve. And from since then, since when we started, we've seen some huge progress in terms of how the team is performing. We've seen some progress in terms of how our batters are performing, and it's good for us. And for us to play England, it is the pinnacle. We've got a rich history between us and England, which dates back 20, 30 years ago. And it's actually very good for the game. So it was a conscious decision that was made by the board to say, look, we're a test playing nation. We need to be playing tests. If it's to do with resources, then we have to make sure that we try and get sponsorship and raise resources to ensure that we fulfill that part of the game.
On a test match level, when talking about wanting to play more test matches and advancing the team, brilliant. We've seen Blessing Mazrabani get a chance in the IPL now. Does it follow that potentially the more profile and the better the Zimbabwe players get, the more chances in franchise cricket, maybe the less available they might be for test cricket for Zimbabwe? We've seen that in countries like West Indies, where
pay to play tests can't quite keep up with pay on offer for franchise. Is that a concern?
Yeah, it is a concern, but I think every other test playing nation must must invest in such a way that it's easier to get replacements. It's not all about blessing. It's about 10, 11 players that play the same role in the country, that we just need to grow them at a much more faster rate. I mean, a country like India will give you 2-3 teams at any given time. I think England, the same thing. So it's good for the players that they're playing in these leagues and they're earning a bit more. It's also good for the game.
And has Zimbabwe benefited, or will it benefit, from cricket now being an Olympic sport, featuring at LA 2028, albeit only 8 teams in that competition? Will you see an impact in Zimbabwe?
Eventually, it's going to have an impact. But I think Olympic sports, I think it just needs to be, it's going to be treated differently for it to have an impact. You see, you don't want a repeat of Champions Trophy in the Olympics. What
do you mean by that? Yeah. As being the top tier, do you mean?
Yeah. You want to find a format, because Olympic is meant to spread the game to some of the nations that cricket is not number one. It must be an incentive for other countries to take up cricket seriously. But if it's going to be a repeat of Champions Trophy, if it's going to be the top 8, then it loses its purpose. I think there must be a qualification process that needs to go on. Look at it as a product that you want to grow in future. So if you look at the under 23s, for example, cricket under 23s, make it a qualification process. And that's the only way even associate nations will benefit from it.
Givemore, thank you very much for being with us on Stumped, and good luck for the remainder of this year and, of course, going forward with Zimbabwe cricket.
That's all we've got time for on this week's Stumped on Akashvani. Don't forget you can follow us on X. We're at BBCWS Sport, and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. And check us out on YouTube as well. Go to the BBC World Service YouTube channel. My thanks to Charu Sharma and Jim Maxwell, and to all of you for listening. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC Sport production for the BBC World Service in association with ABC and Akashvani.